Hello, everyone. This is Mike Winkler, moderator for Docs 101. I'm here today with the legendary Dan Harrison. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Oh, still here.
Good, good. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, your kennel name, and your history in the breed?
Um, I started with my first Dachshund uh, to show back in '76. Then after that, I got one from D. Hutchinson, and that was when I got my first champion. And when I finished her, she gave me a long hair, and that's when my career really started with those. But I mean, I've been successful with both the standard smooths and the standard longs, and I had miniatures too for a while.
Very interesting. I didn't know about the miniatures.
Oh yeah, I won the mini roundup.
Wow, that's pretty good.
With
All right.
standards lots of times, with miniatures this time.
Well, however you can win, I guess.
Uh,
All right. So tell me about the Boondox name. How did we get the name Boondox?
I just came up with it. I
Well, it
mean,
worked.
it had nothing to do with anything. I just thought it was an easy one to remember, and it's like, and plus everybody does remember it. So
I think it's pretty much stuck in every Dachshund household's name now.
yeah.
It's a household name for Dachshunds.
Uh,
All right, so what got you into Dachshunds? How did you land there?
um, when I was in the second or third grade, I was sick, and my mom and dad wanted to get me a dachshund. They went to see a dachshund, and we got there, and the people wanted like $100 for it, and they couldn't pay it. And so like they were really sad. So we got in the car, and I was like crying and everything. And they said we could only pay $35 for it. So as they were driving away, the people came out waving their hands and said, you can have it for 35. So I got my, and he was a really outstanding dog. He was real. I mean, I could have finished him. He was a really great dog.
Wow.
And then I had another, and then I've had two more pets then. And then we started showing ponies, and I started showing chickens. And finally, I didn't have anything left, and I got an Afghan, and I thought I was going to show that. And then I thought, you know what? I bet I could do okay with dachshunds. And I did okay with dachshunds. I'm glad I got that one. So that made it easy for me.
Slightly okay with Dachshunds anyway. You stumbled through.
Yeah.
All right. So, I kind of read some of your history here and there, but let's talk about the beginning when you got those initial confirmation quality Dachshunds. What, how did you learn what you were doing? How, who were your mentors? How did things come together for you?
Um, I was in horses and ponies. And so when you're in there, you get to know what is built right and what can move right, what carries its head right, what
True.
takes the outline you want. When you get done with those, you know what a good one looks like. And so when I got started, I was looking around, and there was one dog that always caught my eye, and it was a dog called Moffat's Harvest that Lorraine Heichel was showing. And I wanted a daughter of his. So I contacted her at a show in Terre Haute, and I said I wanted his puppy, and she gave me the number, and I went and got a puppy. And she was a nice dog, and she would have been finished, except they changed the rule. Before that, you didn't count specials, so she would have been finished if we'd been able to change the rule back to where it was. But she was an outstanding dog. And in fact, I bred her, and she produced probably one of the best smooths I ever had. She was a specialty winner, a group winner, and she won best of breed from the classes. She won best of breed, from the open class. I mean, from the specials class, and she was outstanding. And then right after I bred her, I found that my old bitch, the Harvest daughter, had epilepsy. She just died without having any kind of a seizure or anything. She died,
Oh
and I
my.
made the mood right there that I was never gonna breed anything with that because there was nothing you could do to test for it. You know what I mean? And the
Yep.
people, oh, they all have that. Everybody's so sorry, but that dog, not Harvest, but the maternal grandfather. And he said, oh, everybody knew he produced epilepsy, and I didn't. So, but in the meantime, I had gotten a new one from D. Hutchinson. Hannah Laura got her for me at DCA. She saw her, said to buy her. I called her up, and I think I got her for I think like $300 or something. I didn't pay much for her, and by doing that, Dee was always the co-owner. And whenever I bred her, she got half the litter, and she got as much as she wanted. I never argue. I mean, with knowing Dee, you don't argue with her. You know what I mean?
I have heard.
So whatever she said, I just went along with. And she was really a great, great, great person. And she was probably my first mentor. She was my first mentor. Hannah Laura, my handler back then, was a mentor. And then my first mentor I started breeding with was the Moffats that had the Moffats Harvest because I got the Lionel daughter and I bred her to Moffat's Harvest, not Moffat's Harvest, Moffat's Georgie, which was Harvest's brother, and Moffat's Midas. And from those, I mean, I got, it sounds awful to say, but I got specialty winners and group winners. Chucky Bunyan was in that bunch. Uh, the Moffats kept one that was a top sire. And then the other bitch was a specialty best of breed winner, and we never bred her. But I got good stuff from that. And from those first litters, the ones I sold in pet homes produced for me, even down the line. So like that was really a golden cross. And when I finished her, uh, D D called me up and said, "Well, for finishing her, you can have. I've got this long haired bitch that I want you to have. She's just really beautiful, and you'll like her, and blah blah blah." So I'm thinking, I bet I'm not gonna like her. Do you know what I mean? Because I probably won't like her.
Absolutely.
And so she sent her to me, and I opened the door, and she was the most beautiful bitch. She had the beautiful head set under herself. She had short little hocks, dead level top lines, lots of front, lots of coat. Not the longest bitch in the world, but beautiful and tight. And and I just fell in love with her. You know what I mean? It was like there was nothing I could do. She did have a big knot in her tail, so I never could show her. That's why I got her, because Dee had this one with a big knot in her tail, and she was getting rid of her, giving her to me. So and even that worked good for me because the first time I bred her to Java, handler's dog, Champion Beast, Java de Bayard, and I think we finished 8 of the first litter.
Wow.
There were like 6 males and two or three females, and I think 8 of them finished. And so that put me well on the way to being having top producers. Bred her again, again one of the best bitches I ever had was Dolly. She was really an important one, and bred her again to Giraffe, and that's the one that produced PJ. And
So
he was
so you didn't just put your foot in the water, you dove all in, right?
yeah.
So you were talking about coming from horses. How did you, or when did you, or how and when did you, were you able to develop your eye for the dachshund with the standard in mind? I mean, was it just kind of a natural evolution for you? You understood the parts and the verbiage?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Lots of people read the standard and worry about that, but with me, I mean, I mean, it sounds horrible to say, but I have a gift for looking at dogs and being able to pick out good ones, and the same way with the horses. It's like you could lead them up and down, and lots of people don't ever know the good ones from the bad ones. With me, I could watch it take 2 steps, and I knew it was a good one or a bad one. And if it was a bad one, why bother showing it? You know what I
Right.
mean? Because you soon learn in that that you don't show ponies that weren't up to snuff. And with that, I kept that in with my dogs because again, why show something that you can barely finish? You know what I mean? Because
Right.
even if you barely finish him, you still have a dog you barely finished. So
And you think that would carry on down in the next generations? Or you,
yeah. Well, like my first champion was Choo Choo, and she produced Chucky Bunyan and all those. And she was a beautiful bitch. She looked like something the Gears had produced back in the '60s, with the Gears or the Hyings. She was just beautiful. She had a beautiful head and neck, beautiful body, lots of forechest, long, level, beautiful. But she didn't have enough forechest. So that's why I picked the Moffat stuff to breed her to, because that's their dogs were. I consider the Moffats to be the best smooth breeders I've ever seen. I mean, you go up there and you can spend all day looking at their dogs. But anyway, I bred to their dog and got the fronts. And once you get the fronts, if that's what you want, you always breed for the fronts. So that's what I did. You know what I mean? As soon as I saw that I had the fronts, that's the only. Everything else went. I didn't care whatever they else looked like. I don't care how good they were in the rear, how good they were anywhere else. If they didn't have the front, they didn't. They never stayed here ever.
so you had in your mind's eye pretty quick what you were looking for and what you were willing to deal with and to
Hmm.
pet out.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I've noticed, in my time of knowing you, is it seems to me you were really good about selling your best around the world. What's your thought and philosophies on that? Because you put a lot of good dogs out there and you didn't keep them or hoard them up.
Well, my philosophy is if you have something that you cannot live without, don't sell it. But at the point I was at in dogs is I would probably, I mean, this sounds horrible to say because people can't breed like this anymore, but I would have 6 or 7 litters a year.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And so
it
for
was
them,
a different time.
it's a different time. And you you soon were able to go through them. I mean, the lesser ones, we went out the door quick. You didn't make money on those. The ones you made money for were the ones you kept a long time. And with my feeling is if I had to have something from it, I wouldn't sell it. But if otherwise, if people wanted it, they got it. And I mean, and I sold people. I mean, I sold them to like people like Billy Magrum who bought Chucky Bunyan. The Moffats got stuff from me. D would come in and we'd have a litter and she'd get 4 or 5. You know what I mean? She could come because I know she never picked the ones I wanted, so I let her have her pick.
That was going to be one of my questions was how was that if she snatched up the puppy you had your eye on?
She never did. You know what I mean? Well, most of all, she wanted bitches, and it was the first ones were too hard. You know what I mean? We didn't have many bitches those first years, and I wound up with bitches that I really really loved. So but like the people from South Africa, the people from Japan, people from Spain, they always got my dogs. You know what I mean? They knew that they could come to me and I wouldn't be sending them just junk. You know what I mean? They
Sure.
get something they'd be happy to show.
Absolutely.
And besides that, when you sell those, you're making a name for yourself. Even if you don't have it, your name's still on it. People are still going to come to you for the dogs. And they were just easy people to deal with.
Did you retain stud rights, stuff like that, on your dogs that were sold here in America, where you kind of broadened your own horizon? Could go back
Um,
to that stuff?
no, I never did. You know what I mean? I never quibbled about that anything. I let people have everything, but they all were really good to me because when I bred to them, I'd finish 5 or 6 out of the litter. Do you know what I mean? So it's good for them too, because if I was going to breed to them, I would breed something that they'd want to have a puppy from.
Right.
So like they would always let me breed to the dogs. And another thing I did is everybody acted like I would never sell them puppies or never breed to them. I never turned anybody down. Anybody could come, even people I hated could come to my place and get a dog from me. As much as I hated them, it wouldn't matter to me because my thought, I mean, it sounds terrible to say this, but my thought was that if I was going to, if it was going to be one of mine, it'd be better than what they have anyway. Do you know what I mean? It sounds bad to say, but that's what I felt because I
In
knew I'd be.
some circumstances, I can get that. Yeah.
Yeah. But you
So,
know, it's like really easy when you're breeding that many litters, you're going to have something.
yeah,
Always.
you didn't have a lot of time to dilly dally around.
No.
Get them out and get them going. How do you relate? Talking about in your era, things were very different in the way business was done amongst breeders. I'm sure you have some familiarity with today's breeders where we have such strict contracts and things like that. What do you think about the dachshund world today in that aspect?
Crazy. It's too it, it's like everybody wants to detail every little thing of the dog. And trust me, you can breed something that's not quite up to snuff. Do you know what I mean? You can still breed it. It doesn't mean just because it's wrong there that you can't breed around it and get past it. Most people, when they have it, that's in. Trust me, there are lots of them I bred that many people would never have bred because I knew I could get past. It sounds bad, but I could get past anything as far as like breeding them. I could breed around it.
Right. Well, you knew your lines, I assume, better than anybody. So
Yeah.
you knew what you could fix and what you couldn't. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but what do you think about today's current dachshunds versus back in your heyday? What changes do you see in the breed as a whole? Are they good? Are they bad? In between?
I'm trying to think right now. Um, like the standard longs aren't as good as they were when we were when we had the best. Wally and Mary, Martha, myself, we had the best there was. You know what I mean? It was like there were all. I mean, like at DCA, there would be 5 or 6 specials that came from my place, and and you'd want to say which one was going to win because they all had the quality that would be there. Most of the time, right now, and I don't know what happened, but like we had the big fronts, we had we had the high head carriage and everything. And to me, it's just not quite the same. We're looking right now. I don't know what changed, but I guess style changed or something. Um, Smooths, I think, are still about the same. Um, Wires are a little better now than they were then. Mini wires are not my favorites, but and the mini smooths I think are really good, and the mini longs are fairly good. But it's like really difficult. It depends on where you are too.
Right. It depends on your eye and your preferred style, I suppose.
Yeah. And people don't have that preferred style because now I think they breed. I don't think you can breed like we could. So whatever they breed, they show. And then not like when we were having you know 5 or 6 litters.
Yeah,
Lots of
I do
times
tell
nobody.
to have one a year or every other year.
Yeah.
So, and for me, each one has to count so
Uh-huh.
much. I
Yeah.
don't have gamble room. So
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference.
It does. It makes it totally different. Like when I was getting started, I would go to like Mary Howell's place, and she would have these long chicken shacks, chicken houses that she had filled with dogs, filled. I mean, and you know, she kept a lot of dogs, and we never got in. You know what I mean? It's like, but she brought them out to see for us to see, and there was always something there, you know, to work with. But you know what? I mean, that now you don't have anybody that can breed as much as she did, as much as the Moffats did. Like the Moffats, when I would go to their house, they could have 35 dogs in their house. They lived in a suburb. They could only have 4. So they'd always put 2 reds and 2 black and tans out. Nobody knew that they were all different.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
That's pretty smart. I can't imagine trying to take care of that many dogs, let alone shuffle them in and out anymore.
that's all Russ did. Russ was the one that as soon as he got up, he'd start putting them out, and he never stopped all day. He just let them in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out.
That'd be a full-time job for sure. So, I mean, thinking about what you're talking about where they had multiple dogs, I suppose, you know, in that case, variety was the spice of life. You could probably, would you think, find almost what you were looking for every time you went to look?
Yep.
You know, if you were lacking one part, you were bound to find it in that variety.
When I got started, I never bred to a dog I whelped. I never did in the first 10 years of showing dogs. I never bred to a dog that I whelped myself until I got PJ. And I didn't breed to. Martha bred to him, John Brady and Lon bred to him, and I bred a bitch to him. And once I saw those 3 litters, I bred everything to him. You know, everything. I mean, literally anything I could breed to him, because no matter, he just was a dog that produced better than he was. You know what I mean? And he was good. He was good as a special. He was a nice dog, but he produced better than that.
Why was it that you didn't breed back to your boys for so long?
I always bred to the top producers. Do you know what I mean? And most of the dogs I had weren't the quality that I considered top producers. I had dogs for my first long hair litter. I had a dog that was winner's dog at the day before DCA, big winner, won the specialties varieties around here. I never bred to him once. Never bred to him once. And
Do you think you might have missed out in doing that?
no, he did. He had a lot of things to offer, but he didn't have enough coat for me. And you know what? It's just that as good as he was, as good as his mother was, why would I take a chance on I mean, at that point, I would rather breed to Giraffe. I'd rather breed to Java, rather breed Ulysses, all of those dogs, because they were
I
the
totally get that. I'd breed to those dogs today if they were here.
we all would. No, I don't know. I say we all would, but I don't know if everybody would or not, but I would.
So once you kind of crack the ice on breeding to your own studs, when we look at your pedigrees, it's a lot of heavy line breeding, I guess, from that point forward. So after you started breeding to him, when did you decide that hey, my boys aren't too bad. Let's get cracking.
Once I bred to him, well, and leading up to that, I had finished several of were national specialty winners, and had lots of bitches that were here. I had Lardy, who was that's the one D that I got from D. She was a top producer, and I had Wally bought Delilah back from D, and I had her here, and I had all these bitches, and and I was looking around who to breed them to. So then when the people bred to PJ and I saw what he produced, I thought, the light bulb goes on. I said, I can breed all of those dogs to him. And just like at that point I had two sisters that were. I had two bitches. One was Winter's bitch at DCA back in '84. She was a beautiful bitch called Honolulu, and she was beautiful. And I bred her to PJ, and from that I got chaps, chaps and cheers, and they were just outstanding dogs. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like there was never any question of selling them. They were here the minute they were born. They were never going any place. Um, and then I had her other sister, Orchid, who was by Giraffe, and also out of that bitch I got from the Country Girl. And I bred her to PJ, and that produced Shoney and that whole bunch. And the funny thing about the Shoney thing was when they first time they bred Orchid to PJ, she had like 9 puppies, and it was 8 dogs and 1 bitch. And Martha was sure I was going to take the 1 bitch, but I have so many, I had so many dogs, I didn't care, and I said, I'm not going to take your only bitch, Martha. You keep her. You know what I mean? You have fun with her, but I'm not going to take her. I said, just repeat the breeding, and I'll take the puppy from the next litter. So she repeated the breeding, and she came up from Alabama. We met in Kentucky, and her and her friend Sissy were so worried that there was this one bitch that I was gonna take. They thought, oh my God, he'll never miss her. And Sissy said, now Martha, you don't know, because he often doesn't pick the ones you like. So he probably won't even like her. And so I pull up in the parking lot and I walk over to it, and I'm looking at the puppies in the pen. And they just go right over to that bitch and pick her up and say, "That's mine." And that was their favorite. And that was Treasure. And she turned out she was the best. She was the best dog I ever had. She was the best. And I mean, and I don't say that lightly, but there's just a certain few that are, they're just better than anything else. I mean, and she was one that it killed me to lose with her every time. So.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how you got rolling there. Let's talk about your network and your circle of friends. Excuse me. At shows and things like that, how you would get together, and did you all stand around and evaluate puppies and dogs and all of that?
We hardly ever talked about dogs. It was like we would be out maybe looking at dogs, and I think just by having the dogs we had, it fixed in our mind what we wanted. But we had a whole lot of people that were really good friends that we spent a lot of time with. I mean, like my friends Wally and Mary, Susan Jones, Martha Grantham, Sissy Johnson, Bob Bray, um, Lon and John. We always worked together, always stayed at the same place, and always spent a lot of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and if you're in a, oh, I guess maybe they watched me or something, but whenever you get a dog out and start working on it, they'd all be over watching me what I was going to do to it, because they never knew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and I think that sort of helped them find out, because there's certain ones that have what you want, and you don't know it till you start showing them.
Right. When you were, further along in your program, were you able to, once you had your line established, you had a litter, could you pretty much, how early could you pick your puppies after you knew how they were going to develop?
I picked at 12 weeks.
12 weeks. And were they pretty stable, or did they change a lot after that, or?
Nope.
You knew what you were getting at 12 weeks?
Mm-hmm. Because that you could tell what they had at 12 weeks, they wound up with. I mean, I had some that never changed. It was like my Treasure. she always, it sounds awful to say, but she always looked just like her pictures. No matter when she's 8 weeks old or 14 years old, she always looked like her pictures.
That's nice.
And then where Sting and then Chaps, they were two that were stretchier, longer on leg, set under themselves beautifully, but higher on leg and everything. And at first I didn't like it. You know what I mean? Because it didn't fill my eye with what I wanted them to be. Because I want them to look always like Treasure. You know what I mean? That was my eye.
Yeah.
But I soon found out that with Treasure being so low, if I bred her to something low, she gets something with no legs at all. So the second litter, I bred her to Sting, and that's where, like Sonny came from, Forrest Gump, Polo, Paulina. That's where they all came from, and they were the top producers of my later years.
So it worked out pretty good in the end.
Hmm.
Did you have any goals set for yourself in your program that you kind of followed along the way, or did you have a final goal in mind?
No, I mean, I just always liked. I mean, I'm a I'm a big competitor person, so I'm a very competitive, and I like to win. So as long as I was doing that, I was fine. And I didn't realize later, and I guess I didn't realize till later that like I hardly ever lost. It's like it's like you can always remember the one or two losses you get, and it burns you up. It's not till later you realize, you know what, I really didn't lose that much. So.
Gosh. In hindsight, would you have went back? I mean, you've had a lot of time to think about the dogs and your accolades. Is there any changes you've thought about over the years that you think, I wished I would have done that, or I wish I would have tried this or that?
The hardest thing for me, because I mean, I started out being a smooth breeder, and I really loved being a smooth breeder. But they were the weirdest. They were they were like hard people to deal with. You know what I mean? It's like if you didn't say strictly within their lines, you know what I mean? You had to breed to only their dogs. And the minute you went to somebody else, that was it. You weren't
You
in
were
the
done.
group any longer. Yeah. And so, like, I mean, I regret losing like Thelma and Russ because of that. I regret losing Carol and Ufa because of that. And and uh, and I guess I was working with Kay at the end, and so you know what I mean. It's like it's really difficult to think that if you're going to use my dogs, if you use anybody else's, I'll never speak to you again. Is not anything I would think about. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not what I think about. So
Right, right. Understandable. Let's talk about, we're kind of going back here, but I have to ask, what is type to you?
well, I mean, to me, there's certain things that a dachshund has to have type. And I hate to bring it back, but it's always that big front. If they do not have a big front, they're not a dachshund. I mean, lots of people say, well, it's so good in the rear and it's so good here and it's so good there. Doesn't matter. If it doesn't have that big front, it's not a dachshund. And and with that big front, you have to have the shoulders set back, have to have it at the where the neck comes out, because the neck's set back in the middle of the spine. You want to have that long arch neck. You want to have, and I don't want them to be low. I don't want them to be too low. Treasure was about as low as I would like to get, but uh, I want to have the level top line, short little hocks, and and you just want them to present themselves. You know what I mean? And that's a hard one to say because they have to do it. It's not something you do. It's something when they come out, they present themselves. You know what I mean? And they
That's
show
kind
what
of
they have.
my philosophy. I want my dog to win on its own accolades, or I don't want it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, so that's a little bit about type. Do you, without naming any names, do you see any dogs currently of today that kind of fit your idea of type? Are there any still out there that you might have seen or can think of?
Well, I mean, one that just retired, the Burns, I thought was a nice dog. He was a nice dog. I would definitely I would breed to him. Um, and I have seen a few bitches I've seen that I would take home, and but I when I see them, I tell people I would take. You know what I mean? Because I'm somebody that, like, I don't give a lot of praise, but when I do, I really mean it. You know what I mean? I don't just say, "Oh, that's so beautiful," blah blah blah. No, that doesn't. I mean, if it's not exactly what I want, I don't say anything.
Right.
And so, and in smooths, yeah, there's several smooth breeders that have stuff I would have, uh, that I would take home. Uh, Wires, probably.
So there's still some
Yeah,
dogs that catch your
there are
eye.
a few, but it's more difficult all the time. But even when I was showing, not every dog caught my eye. Do you know what I mean? It's not like everything was so good. It wasn't. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's like certain ones were.
It's still that way today.
Mhm.
Um, Another question is, what are your thoughts on building a line today? If someone's brand new and they're getting started and they're trying to build their own line, what are your thoughts about that? What can you tell them?
Get the best bitch you can from the best breeder. You know what I mean? And it can't be just, a fourth or fifth bitch from somebody that's never bred anything. It's got to be from a top breeder, and it's something that you just, you know what I mean. They're all going to have faults, but it's your job to figure out how to get around those faults.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like it's nothing you can do. You know what? There's nothing you can do to make them disappear, but for the next generation, get around the faults. It's like my first one. She needed a good front. Well, once I got that good front, you realize it was easy to get. But the thing is, if you lose it, is it ever going to be that easy again? So my problem was, don't ever lose it. So when you're breeding for those kind of things, if you have something, don't ever lose it. You know what I mean? Don't forget about it. Oh, I had it once. I don't care about it. No. If you have it once, you need to always have it.
Right.
I mean, and that's the hard thing. Most people say once they get it, I had it, don't have it now, but I can get it back. Well, no, you can't. Trust me, you can't get it back.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. If you lose a front, you'll never get it back.
And
And
I,
it's
and I seem really bad about talking about fronts, but they are ours are dachshunds are a front breed. If
it's the
they don't
hallmark.
have the front, they're not a dachshund. And that sounds horrible to say, and everybody hates me for it, but that's what I have to. That's my philosophy in the breed.
Well, what about movement as a whole with good reach and drive? I mean, did you ever pay attention to drive? I mean, reach would come with the front, but what are your thoughts on the drive?
If the front is moving right, the rear's going to catch up. Do you know what I mean? The rear. You mean I never worry about that because that's something that you can fix, but it's not something that you don't have anything if you don't have it. You know what I mean? You still need help with it, but you can still finish the dog. The main thing is keeping that dog with the front and you want to be able to present it, and you got to find the right way to move it so that it always presents the right outline. Because and that's what most people don't really look at outline. But for me, that's what I did. I mean, I never looked at dogs going down and back. That was not important to me at all. I wanted to see them going around because if it was going around and covering ground, that's what I wanted. And by going around, that doesn't mean just the feet moving right. That means the front sticking out, nice underline, beautiful top line, tail set nice, beautiful arch and neck. That's, you have to have it all. I mean, it can't be any part of it. It's got to have all of it.
Whole package.
Hmm.
Looking back, did you on your history, did you ever make a mistake that was like a face palm mistake, and you thought something big that you had to go back and start over somewhere, or do any of that? Were you pretty fortunate?
Yeah, I mean, I was, I always, I mean, I always kept enough going that if I made a mistake, it was gone. But I had several other litters coming along that there would be something in it. Well, when when I when I first got married, I had this one bitch that she was beautiful. She had an ugly head, but she had the most beautiful, beautiful body, arch and neck, beautiful body and everything. And she was fine when I started showing her. Her second weekend out, something scared her, and I never could show her again. She was so spooky. And I thought, what am I going to do with her? So I had PJ here. So I thought, I'll breed her to PJ. And she was a smooth. And I bred her to PJ. And from that, I got Ipsy Pipsy, who is my, my very best long.
You've talked about
Very
her
best
a lot.
smooth.
I've read about her a lot.
My very best smooth. And she was excellent. And she always produced excellence. Well, I bred her once to my long dog Polo. And that was another outstanding litter. That was a perfect one. That was a good litter.
Did you have a favorite dog in your run there?
I I'll tell you the two dogs that I couldn't deal with, like when it was time for them to be put down, that I couldn't do it, was I had Treasure and PJ, and I I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that at all. You know what I mean? I was just like, I couldn't deal with that. Those were my two favorites.
Okay. Yeah, we get those a lot. Now let's talk a little bit about your judging and being in your ring. What would you want to tell people if you could? What are you going to look for? You talked about going around the ring, but you know, what would you look for as a whole when the dog's on the table? How are you going over the dog? Let's just go there.
I don't really go over them that much. You know what I mean? I'm not somebody that like feels every bone and all that, because you don't need to. Do you know what I mean? You can see them move, and you can see if they're going to move correctly or not.
Hmm.
I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, I just like to see. I like to when I go up from the side, I just like put my hand on above the head and feel down, see where the shoulders are, feel where the forechest is, feel under, and just run. Just run and go over, because I want to see the dog is there. You know what I mean? And presents itself. And there's the problem. And there's the problem you see a lot of times. Is so many people have them that look good stacked, but yet when they move, they lose the outline completely. And that means they've lost everything completely, because if they don't, they have to have it good standing and stacked. So when you gate them, you see whether they have the outline moving. And with me, it's like, I want to see you know what I mean? I want to see everything. I want them to have good everywhere. And most of them don't, but there are certain ones that do, and those are the ones you want to recognize, because most of the time, you're not going to get a bunch of dogs that are all perfect. You get most of them that are far from perfect, and you hope to get a couple at the end that are good enough to be the top winners.
Okay, that's something to know. Let's talk a little bit more about your time with Dee. What do you think you've learned a lot from her? Did she share a lot of good information with you? And
I have so many stories I could tell about my time with Dee, but she was like, she was really an excellent teacher. You know, not again that we sat down and taught dogs, because we didn't, but just like watching her, watching what she showed, watching what she brought into the ring, watching the way she presented them. Because Dee's mother was a top-notch dachshund person,
Mhm.
and Dee was 10 times better than her mother, because she knew everything. The mother had a couple of smooths. I mean, it had a couple of smooths and some wires and that kind of thing. Dee managed to be good in every variety. I mean,
Yeah.
every variety she had something good in, and you have to appreciate that. When she was getting new breeds, she'd always call me up and say, well, AKC just approved me for, you know, whatever I needed. I want that on your next panel. And I said, okay. And I always put her on it. But one time when she got the non-sporting, she was at my show, and she was in the bred by class, and it was a huge bred by class, had like 11 in it, because this was like the chows were having a specialty. And I was standing there next to the AKC rep, Steve Hurt, and we're watching her judge, and she's looking at him, and you know she's got that scowl on her face, and so you can tell she's not liking something. So she goes over and gets a standard, and comes up to the person she has first in line, and she says, "Read this standard." And he goes over it and says, blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, that tells you you're second, you're third, but she held out first place. And Steve looked at me and I looked at him, and I said, and we both laughed because we knew they were gonna be mad. And it was pretty bad.
Wow.
And then we had her judge them one time, and there were just a couple of like Afghans or something, and she gave she gave one winners, and then the other one got reserved, and it came to the picture, and she said, no pictures today. She wouldn't even give them a picture. So
Oh my.
she was a hard one to deal with, but if you paid attention, you could learn something from her.
It's all very good information. Um, what brought you to uh, retirement?
Well, I just decided that there was just no way that if I was going to move into an apartment, there was no way I could like have dogs and take them back. And again, it changed, because it used to be everybody kept the dogs, but now they so many people think you're doing a favor if they can no longer keep it and they bring it back to you. Well, that does most breeders no help. You know, I mean, that's not a big
Yeah.
help to most breeders. And so that was one reason I decided I just couldn't do it anymore.
Do you
And,
miss it?
oh yeah, I really miss it. I wish I had dogs, but I'm too old now. I couldn't do it. I mean, when I used to go to dog shows when I was like, you know, in my 30s, I would probably take 15 or 16 dogs in there. I mean,
Wow. That's a handful.
it's too many. But it made you learn things. It made you learn which ones are good and which ones are bad. So
Well, your entries were a lot cheaper then too,
not that much.
because yeah, you'd have to take out a small loan to take that many now.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It is, but
What do you see today that that we could do to improve to make lines more accessible and maybe expand on better dogs? You know, we're kind of where the numbers are getting a little low, and we kind of need to preserve what we've got. What would be your best suggestion to be able to broaden that horizon?
Well, I, I mean, I guess the difference I had and what most people have is when I got started, I wanted to breed the best dogs I possibly could. And that doesn't mean breeding to somebody, my next door neighbor's dog that has a dachshund, or, this person I know in Illinois, they've got dachshunds. I could use their dogs. No, that meant finding out the best dachshund producers there were and breeding to those dogs. And that's what I did. You know what I mean? For my first 10 years. And then when I got PJ, then that made it easier. And when I got PJ, I not only got him, but then I also got his brother, Yorktown, who was he was line bred on my old Lardy, and I bred PJ's daughters to Yorktown, and then I had Sting to give him more length and more neck and everything. So I had those. So but that's the thing is you don't want to forget what you're breeding for. You don't breed just to breed them. You breed them to get the best thing you can. And
That's important.
my feeling is right now that I don't see too many people doing that. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody calls me up and wants me to, breed what to what. And I mean, and I know it sounds awful because I'll just tell the same couple of dogs because if I were breeding, that's who I'd be breeding to. You know what I mean? Because they're the ones that produce what I like. And if they don't produce what you like, then why breed to them?
Right. Well, I think, a huge difference in that is, I think from what you were telling me in your day, dogs were more accessible.
Well,
Today, they are not more easily accessible. We have such reservations, and we don't want this person to use that dog, or we don't want to let the dogs out. So, I mean, do you think that's a detriment to the breed?
yes. I I always sold anybody a dog. Anybody that came to my house for a dog could get whatever I had available. You know what I mean? Whatever I had available.
Did you have regrets doing that at some points?
No, I did. You know what I mean? Because uh, I'm breeding to get something for me to show, and all the rest of them are dogs that while most people would show them, they wouldn't be made, mine. So I wanted people to show them, but I couldn't do it. So to me, they were if they took them and they finished them, great. If they didn't finish them, they just weren't finished. You know what I mean? And it's like nothing I lost. And another thing I thought was anybody that wants to breed to my dogs can breed to them. I never ever turned anybody down ever. Anybody that wanted to breed to any of my dogs, I bred to them. Most people didn't, but if anybody wanted to, they had the ability to breed to any of my dogs.
Did you have a lot of pet breeders back in your day that in your areas that you had to watch out for? Did you still?
Um, not really. I never had pet breeders using my dogs. Um, I'm trying to think. I can't think of anybody that I had as pet breeders. I had one. Well, I don't even know if I should even say this. This is a bad story.
Uh, Maybe don't then. It's a bad one. Keep it PG.
Uh,
But all right. Well, is there anything you could think of that you would like to say to newer people just starting out? Any good key advice?
get the best fit you can. Breed it to the best producer you can. That's produced what you want, and keep the best from there and do the same with that and always try to get better.
That's good advice. And, I think
Not
that's general advice is, get the best and breed to the best you can. So
I mean, and that sounds really ridiculous to say, But when you see what people are breeding to, you wonder what are, how can they do it? You know what I mean? And you wonder why would they do that? That's what I don't understand. But I don't have to. I'm out of it now, so it's not my problem.
Are you, if you're seen at a show, are you open to evaluating dogs for people when they ask you about that, or
Yeah, I don't mind.
just kind of be like, no, no, I've
No,
had
I don't mind it, but you know what I mean? They might not like what I say.
well, that's a point. Is if you ask for an opinion, you better be ready to take that opinion and with grace and humility. Uh, but yeah, I think that's important if our established breeders and people that were well known and notable at that time, if we can approach them and get their advice and their thoughts, whether
Yeah.
it's good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. Uh, that's good to know.
Yeah. Well, it's like kind of different, like you go to DCA and everything, and you see people judging DCA that never won anything at DCA, never were in the top winners, and you're thinking, why are they judging DCA? You know what I mean? It's like that's a question I have. So that's the hardest thing for me, because there are certain people that were the top of the line, and those are the ones that judge DCA, and that's what we should still be doing, looking for. So that's my soapbox for today. So
Random question, and you might not know because we didn't really do much prep. How many DCA winners did you produce?
DCA winners?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, I don't know. I'd have to
Kind of
look.
got you on the spot there, but all
Well,
right. Well,
like PJ produced probably, I think I think 5 or 6 DCA variety winners, and then I've I've produced several smooths and longs, and there, and
how did
like
it feel for you when you would win DCA, even after multiple times? How did that feel?
perfect.
Well, I'm sure it did.
I always expected to win. Whenever I went in, I expected to win.
Well, I think most of us do that. But we
Uh,
expect to win, but some of us don't. Only one of them we'll get to in that variety. But all right. Well, Dan, I do appreciate your time. We'll go ahead and cut it a little short today.
okay.
This is a prequel to an upcoming interview with Dan and Wally Jones, the dynamic duo of their day. So we'll be interviewing both of them and having some great discussions. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. And Dan, if you'll hang tight with me, do you have any closing words before I go? I mean, that we haven't already covered.
I don't think so.
All right. So if you'll hang tight, Dan, I'll go ahead and pause the video and then we'll catch up at the end. Thank you everyone for watching, and we greatly appreciate it.